Gary.
Hi, Will. How are you doing?
Searching the internet. I was thinking about, driving a lot to work the past couple of weeks because my job is like a ghost town, and driving in through Manhattan there's no cars on the road or anything. So I was catching up on some podcasts and things that I listen to, and I was listening to some really good ones from some of the latest ones from the Grey Rooms, Shadows at the Door, Gallery of Curiosities.
hmm
You listen to any of those lately?
yeah. As the listeners probably know, I'm a huge fan of Gallery of Curiosities. They published one of my stories already, and there's another one coming up. I think it might be the end of this year or early 2020 by the time it's actually out there,
Nice.
because it's quite a slow process, getting the voice actor and editing and so on and so forth.
Yeah,
So,
yeah,
um, but yeah, Kevin, the guy that runs it, is a little worried about like the number of listeners that he's getting.
yeah.
So, which really surprises me because the quality of Gallery of Curiosities is immense, and it's quite unique as well. I mean, I'm not into steampunk at all. It doesn't really sort of press my buttons, but even so, the ones that I've listened to have been really good,
Well,
and
the
I've
last
enjoyed
one,
them.
the girl with 1,000 teeth.
Yes, yes.
That was a freaky story. There was some parts. I mean, I was driving too, so you can't totally
Mhm.
concentrate on every little thing. But
Yeah, yeah, you
there
drift
was
away
some.
sometimes.
Yeah, and there was some parts where it was like they were talking about the army and things,
Yeah.
and the part where they were describing how how the girl works, and I
hmm
had my preconceived notions of how it was going to end, and it didn't really end that way. I sort of some of the things I thought about, but then there were parts that surprised me, and I like it when that happens. It was a very unique concept. It was fresh. It was new. Yeah.
I kind of say that the Gallery of Curiosities um, episode, the podcast itself, it's a little bit like Mr. Wing's shop from Gremlins. It's like this weird little place,
Yeah.
that has its own corner. And every podcast's different. Every episode's different.
Yeah.
I mean, Madeline Swan's been published on there. I've been published on there. I think Eddie Generous has had a story accepted by Gallery of Curiosities as well.
Yeah.
But
That's exactly the perfect way to describe it. The
mm,
Gremlins, the old guy from the Gremlins.
yeah,
Yeah.
and
Like.
people need to listen to it. Anyone who's listening to this who wants fancies something a little bit different, I'm not just plugging my own episodes on there. Give it a listen. There's one called A Ring of Roses. I think it's one of the earlier episodes, and give it a listen, Will, if you get the chance. It's a steampunk story,
Yeah.
but it's fantastic. I started listening to it thinking, oh, it's a steampunk story, and then by the end of it, I was like, actually, no, that's really clever and it's really well written.
I gotta check
So
that out. Yeah.
give that a try. In addition to the Gallery of Curiosities podcast, I've been listening to we spoke to Mark, 3 or 4 weeks ago now.
Yeah.
Listen to the Shadows at the Door podcast. That too is one of these sort of little unique niche sort of podcasts that deals with like the quiet horror.
Yeah, and brand new too. Brand new.
Yeah, absolutely. Started just before Christmas, I believe.
Yeah.
First story was written by Mark himself. I think there's the two following that are old stories that have been like reprints.
Yeah, I didn't get to read the ones after. I mean, the first one was the ghost story, and
Yeah.
I thought it was very eloquently written.
Yes.
It just flowed,
Yeah.
and then his voice on top of it,
Yeah.
like, kind of added to it.
Talking about the lantern one, the first one.
Yeah,
or-
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. That was a really good one. I didn't get to listen to the other ones yet, but
Mm.
that one alone, and I love all these sound effects that everybody's putting in. Like, it really puts you into the story.
Yeah. You won't believe it's just one man doing that. You're literally just one voice actor doing all the voices. And
Oh. Wow.
like I say, yeah, Matt, to be fair, he did mention that on the podcast that he was on, but
There's
he
somebody
wrote-
else helping him, no?
Mark helps him, and then later on they sort of have a bit of a chat about how the podcast went and
Yeah.
what that episode was about. And I mean, I know Mark's a huge fan of M.R. James, as he discussed on the podcast,
Yeah.
and he's a huge fan of quiet horror, and he managed to tick the boxes, the sort of sense of growing dread. The guy rocks up at a church or a chapel, or priest inside, he's a bit sort of wary, and there's obviously something not quite right about him. He's been affected in some way by this lantern, and he comes to pick the lantern up, and then he's compelled to light it, which is something that you shouldn't really do.
Yeah,
and
yeah. Like the wick
you know, and
wasn't
then
brand new, and then he had to.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It was pretty good,
And
man. I
it was
liked it
it
a
was it
lot.
was good. And yeah, and you know, not a lot. I don't mean this disrespectfully, but not a lot happens in it. But the way
That's
until
the
near the end,
thing.
anyway.
Yeah, it
But
makes
the
you
way that
think.
it's yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And the next one was the gray rooms.
Grey Rooms.
And that is, like I say, I can't say this enough. It reminds me of the times when I think that was in the 50s or 40s. They were listening to radio instead of TV, and
Yeah.
you had a lot more to work with because you didn't have to use CGI. You had your imagination, and that goes much further than any budget can go. You just have to pretty much have the writing down, and
Hmm.
with the added sound effects that all these places are doing, it's a lot easier to think of the scenes that are happening, and
Hmm.
then you put the rest of the magic into place. It's pretty cool, man. Like the imagery that comes up when you listen to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I was saying to you, sort of, when we were just chatting personally, you know, I really liked the second one, the one about the teddy bear. You know, I loved My Human. Um,
Yeah,
Brian's the first one was very good, but so far of the three that are out, I thought the second one was my favourite, and I liked the sort of the emotional response it sort of brought out in me, and it was a harsh story, and it made me think a little bit as I was listening to it, and it's really cool to have a story written from the point of view of a toy.
yeah.
Yeah,
I actually like Brian's more because I like those kind of
mm,
army horror
yeah,
things.
yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
the whole war was a horror to begin with, and then you throw the
Hmm.
horror aspect into it.
Mm.
Um,
I mean, not sort of plugging myself or anything. Well, I am. Sorry, I am plugging myself. Well, one of the stories I had sort of accepted this week, Dueling Aces, which I believe you've read, that's deals with war and the effects of war, and it's it's kind of inspired a little bit by when I was a kid. My grandparents used to take us to the coastal sort of resorts, seaside towns and that,
yeah.
northwest and in the northeast as well of England. It was rarely my parents that did it. It was always my grandparents. But my grandma was quite a strong-willed woman, and
Mhm.
she'd take us to Pleasure Beach somewhere or one of these little resorts, one of these little sort of fairground places, and she'd buy like a day pass, for all the rides.
Yeah, yeah.
And one time we went to, I can't remember if it was Blackpool or Whitby or Scarborough. It was one of those places, and she bought a day pass for this fairground place, and because she'd spent so much money on it, she then, bearing in mind I was like 7 or 8 years old at the time or something, she sort of more or less made me go on every single ride,
Mm.
and sort of browbeat me to go on every ride that we walked past. And when I said no, it'd be like, well, I paid all this money for this ticket and you're not going on these rides. So I felt like pressured to go on it.
Yeah.
Anyway, I went on one of these rides. It was like a roller coaster come dark ride thing. It was like
Mhm.
an indoor roller coaster, and it absolutely terrified me. I
Mm.
was so scared by it. Dueling Ace is the story that I wrote.
Which is this gonna be?
It's in Tales from the DayTripper, I think it's called. It's the Steve Dillon trilogy.
Yeah.
So as far as I can make out, he's done Tales from a few different themes. I think there's Tales from Beneath the Stairs, Tales
Yeah.
from the Lake,
Yeah.
or something like that. Tales from, and this is going to be his last one, the
Mm.
final one in the series that he's doing. And it was an invite-only anthology, so I was lucky enough to get an invite. But I think because I got into Trickster's Treats too,
Yeah.
he wanted something that was themed on like the seaside experience, and that was the first thing that came to mind. So Dueling Aces is about a dark ride, an indoor roller coaster, how it affects the people that ride it.
Mm.
Alongside, there's going to be a H.P. Lovecraft story in there,
Okay.
and there's going to be a story by Ramsey Campbell as well.
Mm.
One that's only been published once before in a publication years and years and years ago, and Steve has had to literally buy the rights for it or whatever he needed to do, hand type it, because there's no sort of electronic version of it anymore, this story. What you're getting by buying the anthology is something quite unique. I mean, I don't know if you've ever read Ramsey Campbell. I mean, I've read a few of his stories, and it's really, really good. But yeah, it's a story that's not in circulation at all at the moment, so it's almost like a new story. So
Yeah.
Brian's war story is very good. And then the next episode of The Grey Rooms is going to be the episode featuring my story, which is The Way Out, which was published first back in 2016. It's the first story I had published.
And that's this coming
Uh,
Friday, right?
that's this coming Friday. So apparently Patreons of the Grey Rooms get it. They should have got it last night, but I believe there was some sort of internet issue
Yeah.
with Jason who runs the Grey Rooms, and he's waiting to upload it or something. But I won't get to listen to it till Friday, and then I'm going to appear on the Grey Rooms podcast on Saturday night,
Excellent.
just to talk about it and stuff like that. But yeah, it's the first story I ever had published. It's still one of my favourites in
I
terms
remember
of plot.
that. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see what they do with it because they do a very, very good job.
Yeah, they do. Definitely.
Production value is fantastic on all of those podcasts we've discussed. You
That's
know,
the thing, yeah. So if you want to, I mean, if anybody wants to listen to them, you could check them out on Twitter or just search them on Google. The Grey Rooms is the first one, Shadows at the Door is the other one, and Gallery of Curiosities.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I'd love to get Kevin Frost on the podcast, but I don't think he's into it. He lives literally apparently in the desert somewhere over in the States, on his own, in like a little one-story shack with chickens and stuff. And I believe his internet connection is like terrible as well. It's like almost got a dial-up or something still.
Wow.
But he really does
Sounds
live
peaceful
out,
though.
yeah, he lives out in the sticks, so I think he's a little bit of a sort of a recluse in that respect. But hey, the guy is fantastic, and he's always paid very well. His editing's been fantastic when I've dealt with him. And then one time I got something in the post, and it was 2 copies of a book that he'd done like a best of, and it had one of my stories in it, and he'd literally just sent me 2 copies. Dealing with people like that, proper publishers that pay regularly, and they pay on time, and they give you copies of the stuff as they should do, and they edit.
Definitely incentive for you to keep, going.
Yeah, exactly. Go back to them, and you know that they won't take any old rubbish, and they'll do good by your story. So
yeah. Well, Gary, I'll check you next time.
I'll see you later, babes.